it be possible that the scion of royalty, a young man who willingly moved to the U.S. with his wife and has his own checkered past donning fascist regalia, could have the reckless arrogance to call for censorship of Americans online? Well, it's very possible if that royal is former Prince Harry, who's telling us that we need to shut up and let big tech muzzle us. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You got it. Former British Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, is at it again. Following on the heels of an August essay he posted via Fast Company, in which he exhorted corporate elites to stop advertising on platforms he thought promoted hate and division, Harry, his real name being Henry Charles Albert David, now appears desirous of harsher and more overt censorship in his adopted home of America. The amplified call comes via a January 22nd interview with the same website, an interview in which Fast Company repeatedly refers to Harry as Prince Harry, or PH, despite the fact that he and his wife dropped their royal titles a year ago.
The decision that I have made for my wife and I to step back is not one I made lightly.
An interview that reflects Harry's evident lack of self-awareness, and an interview in which he exhibits a bias towards labeling misinformation any information or opinion which he finds disagreeable. And of course, it's an interview in which he makes very clear his desire to muzzle people expressing this so-called misinformation. So, after referring to a collective more than once, then calling on social media platforms to silence what he sees as unacceptable information or opinion, and after calling for users to fact check, evidently never considering that that's precisely what we do, which results in our skepticism of biased so-called news sources and government propaganda that contains no tether to reality, Harry offers this. Finally, there's a responsibility to compassion that we each own. Humans crave connection, social bonds, and a sense of belonging. When we don't have those, we end up fractured. And in the digital age, that can unfortunately be a catalyst for finding connection in mass extremism movements or radicalization. I hope you like my rolling R there. That's in honor of John Lydon. This call for compassion through collectivism and censorship, coming from a guy with the compassion to wear a Nazi swastika armband to a party in 2005. This from a chap whose former teacher at Eton claimed she wrote an art paper for him at his request. She who succeeded in backing up her story with a recording of her conversations with the then prince. I mean, heck, if Harry is actually serious, he'd be making a foolish spectacle of himself, especially coming from the family ruling a United Kingdom, which recently saw the Scottish branch arrest and attempt to imprison Mark Meechan, aka Count Dankula, the funny and insightful comedian and YouTube commentator who merely made a video recording of his pug and mockery of Hitler and was almost thrown in prison. If Harry is serious, he'd look the fool for the added fact that legendary British comedian John Cleese recently left the UK, in part because of its growing censoriousness.
So you're leaving the country because
I'm very disappointed with the way the country is run. My particular beef is with the newspapers.
Perhaps there is a correlation between the kind of press which is robust, which creates a certain level of curiosity and cynicism.
Yes. No, it's the lying and the triviality that I object to.
And he has subsequently called out the United States cancel culture.
I think that they misunderstand one of the main purposes of life, which is to have fun. This very small group of people who are super sensitive, maybe they should be working on their emotions, because as my My mentor, Robin Skinner, the psychiatrist, once said, if people can't control their own emotions, they have to control other people's behavior.
And Harry sure would look silly calling for even more censorship when pitted against the wise offerings of British actors, producers, writers, and comedians such as Ricky Gervais and Rowan Atkinson, both of whom have spoken out in favor of wide open free speech. As I noted in an earlier piece and video on CNN and Brookings Institution figures calling for government censorship, it was the UK itself that John Stuart Mill called home when he wrote On Liberty in the 1800s, a text in which Mill recognized that most Western nations had constitutions made to supposedly hold back government from infringing on things like speech, but that the population in those countries was starting to clamor for their governments to act in anti-liberty ways that circumvented the supposed constitutional barriers. And they were doing so often in attempts to shut down dissent. Well, let's get it straight. This is what is happening in the United States and all around the world right now. As Mill noted, we should not fear free speech. We should embrace it. Freedom of speech allows us to test our assumptions, test our evidence, and test our conclusions. And most of all, it lets us hone our own arguments. And it's integral to the lifelong search for truth on which God-given free will is based. You know, in 1776, an American offered a message to guys like Harry. His name was Thomas Jefferson. And about all men in the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson wrote in part, quote, when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Sorry to say, Harry's statements about free speech are reckless abuses of people with whom he simply disagrees. One need not become bombastic and make references to the American Revolution to offer him a suggestion that he toned down the calls for silencing of differing ideas. Jefferson's words are wise, and their sentiment about freedom can help Harry at a time like this. Well, they can help him as long as those words from Jefferson aren't censored, because they don't conform to Harry's idea of truth. Hey, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe. Remember, spread these around to as many people as you possibly can. I'll see you in the comments section at YouTube. I'll see you, well, I won't see you on Facebook myself because Facebook's banned me for a while. Yeah, just around the same time they did that to Ron Paul. So I guess I'm in okay company. And you can find us on Twitter, Parler as it opens up. Oh, also Rumble. There's MRC-TV presence on Rumble, Twitter, of course. And go to MRCTV.org to find out what the whole team is doing there. And please, if you get the chance, go to MRC-Store. I'm on Twitter at Gard Goldsmith. You can also find me on Gab at Gardner Goldsmith. So perhaps I'll see you there. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.